I had a terrible time playing my first and only Uncharted game in the past. My friends tell me that Uncharted's 2 and 4 have the good stuff, but I do not intend to get there after having a real bad go of the original. I made it about 2/3 through Uncharted before I realized my complaints had accumulated to the point where I wasn't even enjoying the good parts. It's easy to list my issues. Movement was really sticky, it was too easy to get lost in a level looking for the intended path, and despite the combat not being fun, you are forced into a lot of it, wave after wave of enemies who all have your locations psychically pinpointed. Now, the Tomb Raider series shares a lot of DNA with Uncharted. You travel to exotic locations, alternate parkour sequences with combat, and the plot is just some loose connection of excuses why the treasure isn't at your current location. But I didn't realize this at the time of downloading Rise of the Tomb Raider, and it did such a good job hooking me early that I didn't have a chance to second guess it. Rise was a free PlayStation Plus title too, so there was no harm trying it. I thought I might boot it, realize I had no desire to continue, and then relegate it to the far corners of my backlog. Except, fast forward to now, I just finished the entire game, including 2 DLCs, and had a really good time with it. So what the heck did Rise do so correctly to redeem its whole genre in my eyes? Sure, Rise of the Tomb Raider does have 8 years on Uncharted 1, but giving that point too much credit really does a disservice to the other fantastic games that released around 2007. It's not like we were still figuring out dual-stick controls or 3D graphics the way that you can excuse some of the awkward shooters from the PlayStation 1 era. Lara Croft just controlled so smoothly in a way that Nathan Drake never did for me. There was much less sticking to walls I had intended to pass on by or missing jumps that should have landed. And the parkour spots in Tomb Raider were also very obviously telegraphed, where I was spending many minutes hunting for the first handhold to kick off a parkour sequence in Uncharted. Rise just always had a telltale white painted wall or some springboard indicating where I will want to jump. Plus, the combat not only felt fairer in Rise of the Tomb Raider, but it gave me more options as well. We'll go in depth later. But in summary of the comparison, I just found that Tomb Raider was friendlier to the player at almost every turn. It was better at being a video game instead of a movie and respecting player choice rather than firmly guiding you on rails that the developer has laid. To be clear, I have not interacted with Tomb Raider content ever before. None of the games, the movies, or even watched any on Twitch, so forgive me if I'm pretty naive about Croft lore or anything that might reference the other games. I did infer little snippets of the bigger picture, but mostly I went through the game knowing nothing about Lara's story until the Croft Manor DLC that I played post-game, and which packed a huge lore dump into my final hour. This game starts out on the icy top of a mountain, with some dude named Jonah I have no context on. Seems like a nice lad that Lara has in the friend zone, but Mans is out here risking his life. Various movement mechanics are tutorialized here, like climbing on ice, sliding on ice, and pressing square to get a better grip on the ice. Then we're whisked backward 2 weeks to Lara's apartment for a little bit of plot. Archaeology. Yeah. We are shortly whisked away again to Syria, where even more movement mechanics are tutorialized, and we enjoy the brief period in this game where the color palette is not pale blue. Then the game starts you on your first baby parkour puzzle tomb. I discovered that this game has hidden challenges, always of the format of find 5-ish hidden objects and shoot them all, and I immediately decide these are tedious and that I'm not going to bother with any of them. Then we make it to the top of the tomb and get introduced to the bad guy, Constantine, who is a higher-up in an ancient organization named Trinity going back to the dawn of history. If there's one thing on my wish list for this decade, it's moving away from cringe evil organization names like Trinity. After that, back to Croft Manor for more plot. This was all whiplash to me, who still had zero context on the Tomb Raider universe. I'm not sure which parts here are consistent back to the PS1 game days and what is new for the rebooted series, but it seems as though our mother has been dead a while, our dad died a little more recently, either through suicide or he was set up to look like one. This Anna woman seems like our dad's more recent girlfriend, but all she does is poo-poo our goals, so I'm immediately pretty against her. Our job is continuing our dad's hunt for an immortality source, which places us in these icy mountains for the game to properly begin, where we've become separated from Jonah. And this is where Rise suddenly clicked for me, because we are given skill points and level up mechanics, and we're introduced to hunting and crafting. These are familiar systems that I can work with. RPG mechanics.
Yes, you! Give us!
Crafting. Of course, like any sane person, I throw my starting skill points into the economic options. Anything that gives more resources, enables rare loot, or boosts XP gain. But then, I have a grand old time exploring the little playground level they give you, shooting rabbits and deer for capitalism. It's a genius way to get us familiar with the area, since bad guys invade it in a minute, but by then we've learned some of the hiding places from hunting. There's also a big scripted fight with a bear in here, which is a real slog for me until I realized that I think the game requires you to kill it with the poison arrow mechanic they just tutorialized, which I was trying to ignore. I never did properly learn how to fight bears, since there's only one more in the game, and by then I learned how to take away its credit card as it tried to charge me. The next area is an icy path that is strictly linear, and later on in my playthrough, I realized that they carefully interwove these rounder exploration-heavy areas with linear, often action-packed parkour zones to variate the gameplay. Much like Final Fantasy X gives you the calm lands to fart around in as a break on the beeline to Xanarkand, Rise gives you large collectible playgrounds that alternate with the linear sections, and it invites you to pause, enjoy the break in the action, and grab exactly as many collectibles as you're currently in the mood for. They even sort of justify collectibles within the plot, whereas in Cyberpunk or Oblivion, it makes zero sense to put your crisis on hold while you go and do every last side quest. In Rise, a lot of the side missions are, in theory, done to inhibit the operations of Trinity or to bolster the local allies. Okay, so this next area is one of the two large collectible hubs in the game, the Soviet installation. This game's plot is extremely simple. Trinity and Constantine are bad. We must collect the Immortality MacGuffin before they do. It is allegedly hiding in the lost city of Kitezh, which is buried under a frozen lake in the hostile remote mountains of eastern Siberia. While Lara gets business handled in the Soviet installation, let's talk about the writing quick. So the overall story is merely serviceable. We're hunting for a mysterious artifact, so the plot has to keep justifying why we need to go to first this area, then the next. But the writing on the little collectible scrolls you find is actually really good. They piece together the stories of citizens who are just caught up in all of this mess. Some from the historical Byzantine people, or modern day some soldier in Constantine's command. This game allows you to interact with as much of the side content as you want to. It's weird. I would have thought that the right amounts of side content to go for were either 0% or 100%, but I was actually pretty happy to grab half of all of this stuff. I would get the obvious ones, especially the challenge tombs, since those felt more like proper new levels than filler, but as the game went on, my completion percentages were a little bit farther from 100% with each subsequent area. And that was just fine. The collectibles don't meaningfully affect your combat prowess or your ability to complete the game. The main reward is bonus XP, but of the 40-something perks I ended up unlocking, fully half or more of them were things I did not even benefit from, like extra combat finishers and situational stealth helpers. By transparently having the payoff for side content decrease the more of it you complete, this game did a genius job of rewarding you for doing some of the bonus tasks while not teasing you into 100%ing the game. Okay, so what plot does happen in the Soviet zone? Well, not a lot. We're introduced to another faction, though, the Good Guys, who are some mountain people who devote their existence to defending this Immortality MacGuffin. We're in Siberia, so it is very convenient that they speak English without an accent. I perform one side mission for them, and I'm rewarded with a lockpick. This mechanic was bad. There are like 5 locked containers in the game, usually containing just a couple materials that I was already maxed out on, and almost all of those containers are in this area or soon hereafter. They just forget about lockpicking after like 30 minutes. This is an issue that comes up again later, since there are so many unnecessary mechanics in this game. Now, this didn't hurt my enjoyment, but many times this game just made me think, geez, they put a lot of work making this mechanic for something we used twice. We also meet some Josh Duhamel-looking guy who will sell us items for coins. Prices seem dummy expensive here, and while I'm clearly saving up for the crafting tool since it will unlock the next tier of weapon upgrading, I still grab the pistol silencer now so that both my bow and pistol qualify for stealth kills. Right after that, we fall into Constantine's hands, and Anna is there too. I ain't fooled. She had a bad vibe, and I immediately and correctly guessed that she is working with the bad guys. Turns out she's Constantine's sister. I consider it a small plot hole that my father did not vet this woman at all and discover her Trinity ties, despite his meticulous nature in every other area. And because this twist was so obvious and fresh in my mind, I'm kind of in a twist-guessing mood. So when we're jailed next to this Jacob fellow, I immediately guess, sarcastically, that he is the ancient and immortal prophet that we've been hearing about. Then, after giving it a second of proper consideration, I'm pretty sure that I am right, and I revoke the sarcasm from my prediction. We bust out together, and I wade through several very fun stealth combat arenas, then one less fun scripted encounter where several armored enemies flood in, already alerted to my presence, so forcing direct combat. I couldn't use stealth. Once that's done, I kind of lose the plot to go fill out some of the collecting in this area, and I wish I hadn't. See, this game has Metroidvania elements with the 10 different navigational tools that they drip feed you throughout the game. I kept finding metal barriers that I couldn't explode, or walls that I required special arrows to climb, or ropes that I needed a knife to cut. This made it a little disappointing to do collecting here since I knew that I couldn't complete it. Perhaps the intent was noble, to forcibly split up the collecting so that you don't get stressed out having to do it all at once. But for me personally, being told that I will have to come back here later just made me kind of check out since I knew that I wasn't going to do that. Is this a good time to complain about the sense system? So you'll have seen it by now in the footage. Periodically, the screen grays out with a whoosh as I mash R3 in order to highlight nearby lootable and interactable elements. This system is awful, and it cannot die out in video games soon enough. Being forced to activate your Lara sense every 5 seconds is the single hugest discredit to this game. A similar thing really brought down The Witcher 3 for me, and I remember this system in the Batman Arkham games too. The color palette is ruined when I do this, and I have to keep hearing this whoosh sound effect, and it takes so much out of the immersion to make me so aware of the rhythm game of timing constant R3 clicks on my controller to maximize uptime on this Lara sense ability. It's bad. Moving along. We're now headed through the mines to reach Jacob's village so we can rally his people, the Remnants, against Trinity, who is actively building up forces to hunt for the MacGuffin in this region. These mines have some really cool parkour sections. The way the camera in this game will sometimes drop and look up at you from below while you're dangling from a ledge was truly dizzying, and it gave me a very real physical fear response. The parkour in this game was very well telegraphed, and it controlled fluidly about 90% of the time. There was some of the typical stilted climbing and getting caught on corners, but with subtle ghostly movement assistance, this game did a great job cheesing physics to help you get to the platform you were intending to hit on a jump. Alright, now we're through to Jacob's Village, which is a green oasis in the frozen mountains. Here I make my first outfit change. See, I've had on this one set that can give rare ingredient drops from animals, because duh. But I quickly had far too many of all the rare animal ingredients to ever matter, and what I lacked were just the basic fur, cloth, and metal bits. There did not seem to really be a good balance of material availability in this game, so my new outfit helps animals scare less, which should give me an easier time capping rabbits for pelts, but there's still a perpetual shortage of cloth and metal that this can't quite fix. Well, this Remnant Valley is the second of the 2 large collectible areas in the game, and again, it's full of spots that I lack the tools to access yet. I do encounter my first wildcat, which is a very fun fight. It runs away mid-combat, and I can tell it's coming around to pounce on me, but I can't tell from which direction because there's cover all around me. I would have enjoyed more of these large cat encounters. We also kill our second and final bear of the game, then do more filler content. While Lara handles some side quests in this hub, let's talk about weapons. You get 4 slots here: a bow, a pistol, a rifle, and a shotgun. Each has at least 4 variants with sometimes vastly different stat lines. I stuck to my bow and pistol wherever possible for stealth purposes, and also because headshots give bonus experience points. Assault rifle came out for the few sections when the game forces group encounters on you without an option for stealth, and the shotgun I only used in the final area once I determined that I'm done grabbing most of the perks I care about and I don't really care about further XP gain. What I did respect in Rise is that they allow multiple combat options. Sounds like table stakes, right? But so many games are heavily prescriptive about how to handle their enemies. How many games have you played where there are like 2 classes of enemies, something like organic and robotic, where the game uses immunities to force you into using certain powers for each type of enemy? Or maybe you're facing shield enemies who resist all weapons from the front so they can only be defeated with a specific shield ignoring move. Maybe this is basic, but I really appreciated that shield enemies in Rise of the Tomb Raider were not immune to bullets. Their heads would poke out sometimes, and they didn't cheat to input read and raise their shield when you fired. This game also had various crafted explosives, but they didn't force you to use them the way other games will do to artificially dictate your playstyle. I used a couple of Molotovs by my own volition, and I was very proud of myself for realizing the opportunities where that made sense. I think it helped that crafted explosives couldn't be stored in your inventory, so if I spotted bottles in the level, it was a tacit hint that I may benefit from using a Molotov somewhere nearby. Okay, back to the plot. We light a beacon Gondor style to summon help for the Remnants just before Trinity invades because, of course, we needed some antagonism. During a cutscene, we learn that Anna wants the Immortality MacGuffin to cure her terminal illness, and Constantine believes it's his divine mission to recover it because his stigmata activates. Cool. At this point, the plot is feeling kind of late-gamey, so I decide to dip out and run the Baba Yaga DLC before it's too late. Lara gets really high on psychoactive flowers and fights Baba Yaga, who turns out to be just a bitter grandma with a knack for chemistry. We're able to reunite her with her husband, whom she was taken from in the Gulag, and reunite both of them with their granddaughter. We also score an outfit that I put on for the rest of the game, mostly because I wanted to look stupid for this footage. Its effect is making our poison arrows more deadly, and I later realized how much I enjoyed killing armored enemies with this effect, so it actually did turn out to have good utility, but I would have worn it anyway to look dumb. At some point I'm not really clear on, we decided that we need an atlas, a secondary MacGuffin that we need to direct us to the primary MacGuffin. So now I'm headed down some path to an underground cathedral to nab the atlas. We're also still getting navigation tools, which feels absurd to me so close to the end of the game. At least the grappling hook is consistently used for the rest of the game, unlike some of the others. Of course, Trinity arrives to the Atlas hot on our heels, but they're slowed by a new faction. There is a legion of deathless soldiers existing in this underground city, protecting the Immortality MacGuffin, and also apparently the Atlas that leads to it as well. We don't have to fight them yet, but it is a nice preview. Honestly, when we do fight them later, it's a bit anticlimactic. They aren't actually deathless. They have the same weakness to hot lead that Trinity does. We score the Atlas, then the next combat arena against Trinity soldiers is my favorite in the whole game. We're in a placid snowy forest with big old Soviet trucks on the road. It's peaceful and kind of creepy. There's also an underwater section where we can pop up through the ice to score kills. Lara's resistance to frostbite is perhaps the least believable thing in this whole game, though. I guess this part was a detour to rescue Jonah, who had shown up for about 5 minutes before getting kidnapped by Constantine. I don't know, the way he shows up and vanishes immediately made this seem poorly written. Constantine gives him a nasty stab in the chest, which puts his life in danger, raising the stakes for us while we play out the rest of the finale. It's now that Lara learns, as I had long predicted, that Jacob is the prophet when he pulls some voodoo to help Jonah, and we are suddenly on our way to the final area. There's a huge planetarium that I'm worried is going to be a terrible puzzle Skyrim style, but we actually just parkour up it and it turns out pretty cool. We're finally approaching the gates of Kitej, which Jacob and his people have fought to keep secret and safe for centuries, but they're just cool with us going there because we're nice. At one point, the deathless soldiers trap me into a combat arena, and it's here that I discover the poison arrows I was so reluctant to use against the bear are actually fantastic against clusters of zombies. Somebody at Crystal Dynamics, the developer, was really proud of their trebuchet mechanics, clearly, because we have to use not one, but 3 unique trebuchets to open the gates to the city. Then we assist some NPC with a 4th trebuchet to take down Constantine's helicopter in a boss fight. We finish him off in a melee duel after he steals our weapons from us. Then we get a choice to kill Constantine or spare him, but he's kneeling there defeated, goading us with the most vicious taunts. The way I saw it, he was badly wounded and essentially asking for a merciful death in his prideful way by spurring us to violence, so I did make the choice to execute him as a combination mercy/revenge. Then, game is pretty much over. Evil Anna is still around, but the undead come for her, and we finally put them to rest by just destroying the MacGuffin so no one gets it, and everybody's souls can rest. With a brief epilogue, Lara is energized after proving that her father's work was correct, and she resolves to dismantle Trinity as the camera zooms in on the Yucatan, where I assume the next game is going to take place. One final post-credits cutscene gives a huge cliffhanger. It's Lara's final conversation with Anna, where Anna begins to claim that although Trinity did order her father's death, Anna was unable to execute it, implying his death truly was a suicide. But she's sniped to death before Lara can question her any further. Voices over the radio decide to leave Lara alive for now, and my jaw dropped at the magnitude of what just happened. This is how you write a cliffhanger, people. So with that, it's my first Tomb Raider game done, and I officially am just a little bit hyped about the Tomb Raider universe and the next game. This game held up very well 7+ years on. I appreciated that combat was maybe 30% of the game, down from what felt closer to 60 in Uncharted. When non-stealth combat was forced, it felt good and partially like a puzzle, trying to figure out which groups could be handled with headshots versus explosives versus saying, I ain't got time for that, and waltzing in with my shotgun drawn. The system of making rewards steadily decrease in quality the more side content you complete felt genius, and is the biggest reason that I was delighted instead of annoyed to do side content. It grants the most meaningful rewards up front and doesn't punish you for getting tired of collecting pelts for villagers halfway through. As far as the plot, oh, that's right. I played the Croft Manor DLC in VR. I'm lucky enough to own a PlayStation VR, which had a mode for this one DLC. In an hour of playtime, I explored the disrepaired Croft Manor and filled in some of my lore gaps. Lara's mother spurned her hoity-toity family's arranged marriage to wed Lara's father instead, then died on an adventure, so her family all blames Lara's dad. He becomes obsessed with resurrecting her, fails, then dies himself. There's actually some touching moments in here about marriage, love, and the meaning of living on through their daughter Lara. It was a really nice way to conclude the game, witnessing Lara's renewed desire to rebuild the manor and continue her family's great legacy. Now I guess let's bring it all back to Uncharted, since that is where I started this video. So Rise of the Tomb Raider taught me that I don't flat out hate the third-person action genre, but just how much of that is thanks to the passage of time versus being an entirely different IP and game studio. Would I still have a good time rewinding for Tomb Raider 2013? Rise was just so friendly to the player in terms of pacing, controls, and supporting different combat philosophies and tastes. In a brief blanket statement, Rise just nailed the balance of creating a video game with action movie aesthetics, whereas I feel that Uncharted failed my tastes as more of an action movie that had a thin game layer plastered on top. Anyway, that's about it. I think I do own the next game, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, so I will be happy to give that a play in the future. My name is Jimothy, and I make videos on a wide variety of games. I would love if you subscribe to get notified of new uploads. I have a Bloodborne co-op run that's currently on hold since online co-op has really dried up lately, but I am planning on continuing my Call of Duty series soon. I'm also live on Twitch a few nights a week where I just began my first play of Mass Effect if you'd like to come say hi there. As always, please comment any feedback. I'm especially curious to hear from people who loved Uncharted and let me know what I'm missing. Are there other IPs beyond these two that do a really good job in the genre? Tell me about them, please. Thank you for watching, and have a blessed day.